Hey Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. This video is expanding on what I just put out earlier this week, showing the connections between the Invictus games hosted in Orlando and the nightclub shooting. Earlier this year, when I was covering the Super Bowl, showing how it was rigged for the Broncos, I was explaining that the symbolism and the coding for the Broncos was heavily connected to death, tragedy, and foreshadowing future destruction. It has just dawned on me in the last couple of days that the Super Bowl is directly connected to this Orlando shooting. If that sounds crazy, bear with me. I am going to explain a good deal of information as clearly as I can so that you can see what is going on in this world. Since 2013, I've been working at this, trying to explain to people how news is synced up with the world of pro sports, and it's all part of an ongoing script, an agenda that dupes the masses on several levels, from fake and contrived news to predetermined and rigged sports. So, with that said, let's get into it. In the shooting at the nightclub, in a lot of the images put out by the media, the 7-Eleven store sign was clear in the background. So was also the Dunkin' Donuts across the street. A lot of 7-Eleven and Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm now realizing that the 7-Eleven sign is not arbitrary. It has a lot to do with Invictus. Remember, Orlando hosted the Invictus games a month before the shooting. The word Invictus equals 117, 11, 7. The poet who wrote Invictus, William Henley, died in history on July 11th, which can be written 11-7. Invictus equals 117. A lot like 7-Eleven in the background. From the date of the shooting, June 12th, to the date of July 11th is 29 days. And remember that they said that the shooter was this 29-year-old Omar Mir Sadiq Mateen. And his name in gematria is identical to the poet who wrote Invictus, that the Invictus games were named after. Omar Mir Sadiq Mateen equals 229. William Ernest Henley equals 229. The Invictus games were announced for Orlando on October 28th, 2015. That's a span of 229 days before the shooting. And 229 is the 50th prime number. Day one of the shooting, they said 50 dead, 53 injured. They've since dropped that to 49 dead plus the shooter, so a total of 50 people. His name, the Small Way, also summed to 103, like 50 dead plus 53 injured. This is par for the course. If you follow my channel, I show how this is how it always is in all of these mainstream reported shootings. All of these stories are contrived. So anyway, we're looking at July 11th, connected to Invictus. Remember, it made big news headlines recently when Donald Trump misspoke, supposedly. You know, I was wondering why this was such an important story. Everyone was tweeting me, "Hey, Zach, did you hear that Donald Trump accidentally said 7-Eleven instead of September 11th? And you know, I document my things on my blog just to look at them in case they come up again. Well, anyway, Donald Trump, the day he said that, where he mistaked 7-Eleven for 9/11, he did that on April 19th, and that was exactly 84 days before July 11th. That's interesting because United States of America equals 84. It's a very important number. That was also a span of 2 months and 23 days. Can you make that out? Let me blow that up. 84 days from the date Donald Trump said 7-Eleven instead of 9/11 to July 11th, or 2 months and 23 days. And 223, very important number to the gang, also an important number to the poem Invictus, which ends with the final line, "I am the master of my fate," which was on the stage of the Invictus Games in Orlando. 223, kind of like 2 months and 23 days. In the Invictus Games advertisement with the Queen and the Prince, they have the British runner with the number 223. They have the American runner with the number 239. Remember, the United States is 239 years old. That's a very important number to the Jewish spirituality, 239. Corresponds with Torah, Golden Gate, what they believe their Messiah will come through. So anyway, that number 50, the Super Bowl. A white horse, the Broncos, won the Super Bowl. Invictus is named after Invicta, the white horse of Kent. The Super Bowl was won by the Broncos, 24-10, a sum of 34 points on February 7th, the 38th day of the year. The Orlando shooting came June 12th, a date with 34 numerology, like the sum of points in the game. Orlando and murder both equal 34 as well. This is a murder story. The Super Bowl was on the 38th day of the year against the Carolina Panthers, who also lost in Super Bowl 38. The word death in Florida both equal 38. I should also note that Colorado equals 38. Colorado is the 38th state in order of statehood as well. In October, I predicted the Broncos would win the Super Bowl based off of a news story out of Los Angeles where a dead body was found on Colorado Street. Colorado Street. And when I made that video, I speculated that it might be a tribute to Flip Saunders, who had just died the day before that story. I talked about the connection between Flip Saunders, Minnesota, Los Angeles. That narrative has been going on all NBA season. Connects to a lot of things, including the death of Prince. Think about how we're now in the NBA Finals and the Cleveland Cavaliers have a chance to win it, the team that would be riding the white horse. Anyway, from the date of the Super Bowl that had all these death numbers on it until the date of the shooting in Orlando was a span of 126 days. 126 days later, think about the date June 12th can be written 12/6. From Super Bowl to the June 12th shooting, 126 days. They put out these symbols in the media, more clues. Here's the wife, supposedly the shooter, with her back to the camera wearing the number 86. Broncos equals 86 in gematria. When you write out 86, it sums to 126. The Broncos win the Super Bowl 126 days before the shooting on June 12th. 86 also has gematria 54. The date of the shooting was a date with 54 numerology, and July 11th will be as well. June 12th and July 11th have the same numerology. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if we get another tragic headline out of Orlando on July 11th. Earlier this year, Donald Trump was visiting there and called for more torture while in Orlando. I documented that on my blog and said, remember this. In case anything bad comes to Orlando, remember this day, Donald Trump calling for legitimized torture in Orlando. Let's look at the poem Invictus. This is it right here, written by the poet who died on July 11th. Again, Invictus equals 117. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. So the poem, it has to do with Invicta, the horse that cannot be defeated. And you hear the poem. It's about, pretty much no matter what the circumstance, I'm going to hold my chin high. I can't be defeated. And the powers that be who govern over us, this is how they feel about themselves. This is why they govern so arrogantly, giving us these bogus news stories with these terrible crisis actors, mocking we the people of this world, and sadly our fellow man, for so many of us, fall hook, line, and sinker for these deliberate lies that are meant to laugh at us. If you look at the names in the mainstream of who was killed in this club, there are names such as Henry Faggot, Angel Cologne, like colon, who supposedly was worked on and saved by Dr. Lube. The powers that be are laughing at us. These people are sick. They have scripted the world. It's all a joke to them about maintaining their power, maintaining their control, while making a mockery of us. That's what September 11th was. September 11th was a mockery of humanity. This nation that spends trillions on defense, that has all these security measures, is supposedly duped and deceived by people who live in caves, we're told, in Afghanistan. Yet somehow all the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. With regards to September 11th, in case you missed my other video, we're talking about where Donald Trump made the mistake between September 11th and July 11th. Some people say the calendar's really off by 2 months, so 9/11 really is 7/11 anyway. In the Invictus games, there was this major tribute to the phrase "I am," which was a huge phrase coded in to September 11th attack. In case you've missed this, the phrase "I am" in gematria, I's the 9th letter, A's the 1st, M's the 13th. It breaks down to 9113. September 11th in 2001 in numerology breaks down to 911. You don't have to break down multiples of 11. 2001 becomes 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 1. So 9113, just like I am, the date of September 11th. And from the 93 World Trade Center bombing until September 11th, was a span of 3,119 days, the reflection of those numbers, 9113. That also happens to be the 444th prime number, Masonic 444. Again, it's the Masons who are responsible for this code. And I'm not saying you're Masons down at your neighborhood lodge. I'm saying the Masons who are in high places. I am, Invictus games. Now, Orlando, the worst tragedy blamed on terrorism since September 11th. Are you following these parallels? So here's Invicta. Invicta, the white horse of Kent. Kent equals 50. Super Bowl 50. 50 dead. They dropped it to 49. Think about how the 49ers hosted Super Bowl 50. There's a reason that they lay out the stories these ways. It's all tributes to the numbers. Anyhow, Invicta has gematria of 33 like Henley, the author of Invictus. Invicta also has gematria of 78 like NBA Finals. This comes in the time of the NBA Finals. Cleveland equals 78. They'd be on the white horse. If they win tomorrow, they'll be the first road team to win the NBA championship since the year 1978. First team since 78, Cleveland 78, NBA Finals 78. Invicta 78, white horse. A gematria of Kent 50. The meaning Invicta, meaning undefeated, unconquered. What that also reminds me of is 44 years earlier in Florida, the Miami Dolphins went undefeated. 44 years earlier. Remember, kill equals 44. Shooting equals 44. Could be a little subtle tribute there with the Dolphins going undefeated in 72. That phrase unconquered has gematria of 137, the 33rd prime number. So does authority. So does Washington, D.C. Remember this because we're going to talk about how the Queen's white horse just died this week and what the connection is with 137. 137, the 33rd prime, comes back to Invicta, Henley, unconquered. This is how it's always been done throughout history by the Masons. These words, they are created based on this numerical system, and they pay tribute to each other. Very special numbers to this gang, 137, 33. So now here's the Queen's horse that died. The horse's name was Guy Fawkes. I haven't been able to find any information on this horse. Neither have the people who follow my blog. This story could be completely fictional. This story came out after I was already writing about the Invicta and Invictus and white horse connections. Now the Queen's white horse, Guy Fawkes, dies. Guy Fawkes is, of course, the character that's been made infamous through the movie V for Vendetta. The masks that are worn by the anonymous people. If you're not aware, anonymous is controlled opposition. There's several things that are interesting about Guy Fawkes. He was born on April 13th, the 103rd day of the year. We just had this shooting with 103 coded into it as well. January 31st, 131. That's a number coded into championships. Championship equals 131. Super Bowl equals 131. This comes in the time of the NBA Finals, this story out of Orlando. It's connected to the Super Bowl. With regards to the 137, Anonymous, which uses the Guy Fawkes masks, has gematria of 137, just like Authority, just like Unconquered. Anonymous is clearly controlled opposition. If they weren't, the mainstream media wouldn't cover them. If it's in the mainstream, it's part of the narrative. It's part of the programming for us as a society. The horse's name being Guy Fawkes, gematria of 118, just like the word death, numbers that show up around death all the time. Here it is for the horse. The horse supposedly died the day of Game 6, a date with 38 numerology as well, another number connecting to death. Also a date with 58 numerology. Remember, 58 was a big number on the Super Bowl. I predicted Von Miller would be the MVP wearing number 58. I was right about that. Cam Newton became the 58th quarterback to start in the Super Bowl. He was related to Huey P. Newton, the Black Panther, who started the Black Panther Party. Think about Cam Newton on the Black Panthers on the side of their helmet. Huey P. Newton equals 58. Oakland equals 58, where he started the Black Panther Party. The Super Bowl wasn't far from Oakland. Cam Newton becoming the 58th QB to start in a Super Bowl. All of this symbolism is important. And when you think about it, it's all based on division. The Freemasons rule by divide and conquer. They divide among race, religion, sex, political party. Think about that in these events. A shooting at a gay club, a divisive topic, blamed on Islamic extremism in a nation of mostly Christians. All of these things used to divide us. The date the horse died was a date with 58 numerology connecting to White Horse. She lost her white horse, Guy Fawkes, in the time of all this weird Invicta, Invictus coding. On the theme of this Invictus, there's this politician running for Senate in Florida. He's trying to take Marco Rubio's chair. His name is Augustus Sol Invictus, and he wasn't born with this name. He recently changed his name to this. GQ wrote this article about him on October 6th. October 6th, 10-6, the date of prophecy. 106 equals prophecy. Look at this headline. Yes, this libertarian Senate candidate really did sacrifice a goat and drink its blood. This is why they wrote that. In gematria, that sums to 717. Think about GQ. G's the 7th letter, Q's the 17th. This article is from GQ magazine. This is how they code this article about him. The small way in gematria, it sums to 321 like a countdown. We're going to look at this article. I'm going to show you what's so suspicious about it. I just want to begin by looking at this man's name, though. Augustus Sol Invictus equals 67 and 103. 67 has to do with sacrifice. 103 is, again, the number that was coded into the shooting at the bar by the shooter, the fatalities, the injuries. Again, Invictus, gematria of 117. The shooting points to July 11th as the next date to look out for. This man, he was born July 31st, 1983. He'll turn 33 in July on the last day. That's a date with 121 numerology, Revelation. We're going to talk about how the Broncos just visited the White House by the numbers of Revelation and how important those were to the Super Bowl. His 33rd birthday is going to be on a date with 74 numerology. When 33 and 74 come together, it's often not a good thing. Often has to do with ritual sacrifice. Jesus crucified on the cross at 33. Jesus equals 74. Cross equals 74. Messiah 74. Gospel 74. That will also be a date with 54 numerology, a date coded into the shooting. So this guy with the Revelation coding, he gets this GQ article on 10-6, Prophecy Day. Let's just go through the article. Everything you need to know about Florida Senate candidate Augustus Sol Invictus. I know it's crazy. Here's an explanation. Wait, what happened? And they're saying this based on what they gave with the headline. This is just the way the article reads. For those who don't know, Florida Senate candidate Augustus Sol Invictus, the only member of the Libertarian Party running to fill the seat vacated by presidential hopeful Marco Rubio, is accused of ritualistically sacrificing a goat in a pagan ceremony. Now, to go back in time, the story about the dead body on the freeway sign, Colorado Street in Los Angeles, the story was that the man who ended up there had just sacrificed a goat and drank its blood in a pagan ritual. They said the man was Jewish. That was the story then. These are similar details. The allegations came to light when Adrian Willey, the chairman of the Florida Libertarian Party, resigned on Thursday in protest, in part because the Invictus claims he is destined to lead a second civil war and is pretty popular amongst white supremacists, but also because of this whole goat thing. As I continue to say, the race war is very important to these people, and they are really trying to build it. When I first started this video channel, the first thing I did was expose the race war coding and what's been going on throughout history. When I predicted the Super Bowl, I showed how it was following the race war code, which is why I predicted the Broncos would defeat the Carolina Panthers for the white Bronco, Black Panther symbolism, plus more. All of this stuff factors into what I have been saying, and here it is written about in a GQ article through this Manchurian politician, Mr. Invictus. I point out that the words pagan and Wicca have gematria of 39, like the 39 books in the Old Testament. Augustus also has the gematria of 39. Get this. Mr. Invictus practices Thelema, an occult pagan religion based on the teachings of Aleister Crowley. Mr. Invictus was ejected from Ordo Templi Orientis for brutally and sadistically dismembering a goat in a ritualistic sacrifice. And if you're new here, I talk about how Thelema is this occult religion that's about do what thou wilt, essentially do whatever you want. And it's very much tied to Israel, the Zionists, and the way they operate in this world, which is operating based on deceit and manipulating the masses constantly with the media that they control, with the governments that they control. Thelema equals 64, just like do what thou wilt, their catchphrase, just like Israel, just like Zion. In Chicago, where this man went to college before he ran for office in Florida, he went to school at DePaul in Chicago. Chicago is the Zionist Masonic Mecca. I showed all the parallels between the Super Bowl in Chicago before it happened too. And after the Super Bowl was won, Obama called the Broncos and said how much they reminded him of the 85 Chicago Bears, which was just comical if you followed my work, because I was showing the parallels between the 85 Bears season and this season that just passed. Anyway, here we go. Thelema 64, do what thou wilt, Israel, Zion. The mayor of Chicago is Ram Israel Emanuel. His middle name Israel. Born on the date Israel was recognized as a nation, Ram Emanuel was. Symbolism for Thelema, got some of that Masonic architecture. Can't help but remind you of the compass and square. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Gematria of 444, just like Masonic. Remember the span of days from the 93 World Trade Center bombing to 9/11 had that 444. It was the 444th prime number. 93 is the most important number in Thelema. You greet and say goodbye with the number 93 if you're in Thelema. That's the way you introduce yourself and the way you say goodbye, by saying 93. Israel was drawn up in history on 9/3, September 3rd. Their Congress is called Knesset, gematria of 93. Their speaker, gematria of 93. Very important number to the Masons and Zionists. Masonic also sums to 223, like the synagogue of Satan, the name given to the false Jews who are supposed to rule in the end times, connected to Israel. More on in Mr. Invictus. Invictus has given an interview to the Orlando Sentinel where he readily admits killing a goat and drinking his blood. The only part of it he refutes is suggestion it was sadistic, because apparently there is a non-sadistic way to sacrifice a goat and drink its warm blood. I did sacrifice a goat. I know that's probably a quibble in the mind of most Americans. I sacrificed an animal to the god of the wilderness. Yes, I drank the goat's blood. I'll just give you a moment to absorb the use of the word quibble here. I want you to realize as we read this that what they're doing in this article is they're making it seem like this is some kooky young politician who's into these occult practices. Occult equals 74, like Masonic, like Jewish. That's what they do. They give people little bits of truth, but they distort it. I assure you that a lot of people in the Senate and the Congress are part of this gang of Thelema that do this occult stuff behind the scenes. This is what's going on. This is what the power players of this world are into. And this is why they operate by these codes, because it's esoteric knowledge. Aleister Crowley was all about these numerical languages. He wrote a book about gematria. This is what they do. This is what I have tapped into. I didn't understand all this when I began researching, but just by, decoding, working hard, all of these pieces have come undone. And I've been talking about all of these things for more than a year. Here it's all coming together. That is the goal of this video, to bring it all together, what I've been talking about since 2013. What on earth possessed him to do such a thing in regards to the ritual sacrifice? According to the Sentinel, it was part of a journey of religious self-discovery. Invictus went on when he walked from Florida to the Mojave Desert 2 years ago. Speaking to Politico last week, he said it was only tangential related to his expulsion from his Masonic order. I was expelled from the order for political reasons, he said. Animal sacrifice was part of it, but that is a deliberate misrepresentation by Willie. Here's his little Masonic order that he's connected to, Templar, Masonry. It's all in bed together. Who is Augustus Sol Invictus? That is a good question. Here's what we know. He's a 32-year-old lawyer based out of Orlando, Florida. According to the bio on his website, he was raised by a criminal defense attorney, but only decided to become an attorney himself when he and his family became the collateral damage of DEA aggression. It's all very cryptic, has more than a few hints of paranoia, and speaks to a general sense of Invictus not being the slightest bit chill. This is probably obvious, but Augustus Sol Invictus isn't his real name. It means majestic, unconquered sun. Now, with regards to the word sun, it has gematria 54, and it often gets paired with 93. They say the sun is 93 million miles away. I want you to remember this shooting at the club connected to Invictus happened on a date with 54 numerology, again connected to sun. A lot of things come back to sun worship. His birth name in gematria, Austin Mitchell Gillespie, sums to 107 like shooting. This man has a lot of connections to the shooting of that date. He began his campaign politically May 19th, 2015, a date with 59 numerology, just like DePaul, where he went to law school. You know, him talking about the Tea Party, the Civil War. This is all what they have planned for us. You know, my book that I'm almost finished with, I show how all of these wars throughout history have been by this prophecy code. And that is what's riddled through this man right here. You know, these details of civil war, racism, the Tea Party, all by the prophecy code, the code of revelation. So back to Revelation for a moment, the white horse Invictus. The Broncos just visited the White House on June 6th. They visited exactly 121 days after Super Bowl 50. Remember, when you write out 50, it sums to 66. San Francisco equals 50. San Francisco hosted Super Bowl 50. San Francisco opened the Church of Satan in 66. That's also the year of the first Super Bowl season. The 49ers hosted the Super Bowl 121 days before the Broncos visited. Revelation in gematria sums to 121 and 49. Revelation's the 66th book of the Bible. NFL in Jewish gematria equals 66. The Super Bowl was played in Santa Clara on the 121st meridian. If you read Revelation, there is white horse symbolism, and the white horse symbolism in Revelation has everything to do with making war. You can pause right here and read it. The white horse is a symbol of war. And of course, in this story, They're blaming it on terrorism, Middle Eastern extremism, and that's what they have used as an excuse to make war in the Middle East ever since 9/11. It's the same thing ongoing. Regarding the Super Bowl as well, there was also, the halftime show, and a lot of people thought that the halftime show had this major tribute to homosexuality with the Believe in Love and Rainbows. And really, I'm not opposed to it. It's just whatever to me. Believe in Love in gematria sums to 137, the 33rd prime, the word gay equals 33. Anyhow, in light of the connection of the Super Bowl and the shooting at the gay nightclub in Orlando, I think this was all part of the sick joke. Those undefeated Invictus Miami Dolphins, 44 years earlier, again, shooting equals 44. With regards to prophecy coding, the owners of the nightclub were Ron Legler, gematria 52 and 106, just like the word prophecy. The club was built for a man who died from AIDS, supposedly, John Poma. His name in gematria sums to 38, like death. Here's the last topic I want to talk about, bringing all of this further together, how these events are foreshadowed in a number of ways before they happen. This movie came out last year, 2015, called Minions, and it has a lot to do with Orlando, Florida. These minions are creatures that are supposed to have existed all throughout history. They've been with the world all throughout time. The movie begins with dinosaurs and fast forwards up to the year 1968, a year I talk an awful lot about. Minions in gematria sums to 93. 93 represents Saturn, the keeper of time. These creatures, again, are creatures of time. Time has gematria of 144. Orlando, Florida equals 144, a number connected to killing. The date this movie came out was July 10th, 2015, a date with 52 numerology like prophecy. The fact that it starts in 1968 connects to 9/11. 1968 is the year World Trade Center construction began, 911 was made the national emergency dialing code, and George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. 33 years later, Bush would become president, 9/11 would happen. Bush's birthday was exactly 68 days before 9/11. This movie starts in 68, not arbitrary. What happens is they arrive in New York in 1968, and while they're there, they see this commercial for something called VillainCon, which is going on in Orlando, Florida. I just want you to notice that New York and VillainCon have the same gematria. The small way, VillainCon equals 48, like Illuminati, like evil. From 1968 to 48 years later is 2016, now the year of the major tragedy in Orlando. And in this movie, VillainCon is in Orlando. Orlando, Florida equals 144 like time, so does Mark of the Beast. And the Mark of the Beast is typically recognized as the number 666. If you sum the first 144 decimal points of pi, the number 3.14 having to do with cycles and circles, it sums to 666. The first 144 decimal points of pi sum to 666. These characters, minions, are referred to as single-celled yellow organisms, which in gematria sums to 314, a lot like 3.14 for pi. If you divide 22 by 7, if you do the real math, it equals 3.14. It gives you the number for pi. If you write out 22 divided by 7 in gematria, it also equals 314 like pi. You see how this all comes together? The first 144 decimal points of pi equals 666. These minions, these single-celled yellow organisms, go to VillainCon. So anyway, when they get to VillainCon, first they have to hitchhike there. They're going to Orlando. When they get to VillainCon, did I put a picture of this character up? Oh, I didn't. Well, when they get to VillainCon, they find out that the most evil person in the world is a woman. And she's a Jewish woman. And she has a Jewish male sidekick. The most evil people in the world are said to be two Jewish people in this movie at VillainCon. The name of the woman is Scarlet Overkill, which has gematria of 75, like Masonic, like Jewish. 65 also connects to Prince. Prince died on the Queen's birthday. This movie is about trying to steal the Queen's crown. Queen Elizabeth, the real queen in history. It takes place in 1968, though. Her sidekick is Herb Overkill, gematria of 65 and 74 as well. Same numbers. Knights Templar equals 65, Masonic 74, Knights Templar, Masons of their time. Herb Overkill also equals 137, like the 33rd prime. The name Herb is 33. So in the movie, these minions, they sync up with these most evil people in the world, and they attempt to steal the crown from the queen. Notice that in history, the queen was born April 21st, 1926. She became queen February 6th, 1952. 52, the year of prophecy. Notice the date she became queen. February 6th, the date that can be written 2/6 or 6/2. That's funny because the word queen equals 62 and 26. Not to mention she was born in the year 26. She became queen just before her 26th birthday. In 1968, the queen was the queen for 16 years. When you write out the number 16, it has gematria of 33. When you write out the number 90, it has gematria of 33. They're the only two numbers that do. This year, the prince died on the queen's 90th birthday, a difference of 33 years, but between them, Prince was 57. The royal baby, Prince George, George equals 57, turned 33 months old that day. The day the queen also became the queen was a date with 79 numerology, connecting to murder, connecting to Orlando. She recently did the big promotion for the Invictus games with the I Am, with her son, the prince. Brother Berg, Extra Capsa, he made these observations as well. There were some things he picked up on. July 11th is the 193rd day of the year. Again, 193 is the 44th prime. The shooting in San Bernardino, which was a hoax, came 193 days before the shooting in Orlando, which was a hoax, both blamed on ISIS or people trying to appease ISIS. All of this stuff is truly synced up. It's a big web. Clint Eastwood did a movie, Invictus. He launched that on a date with 52 numerology, the prophecy code. Has to do with Nelson Mandela. Think about the race war there. It's a big web, big mad web that these insane people have woven. And they're just operating based on how it's all planned out. You know, as I continue to say, the news is scripted for the future ahead. And until we remove this gang from power, it's just going to keep going on this way. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of this knowledge. Just use this knowledge to see through what is going on in this world and how the powers that be are trying to, they're trying to control your mind's eye. They're trying to tell you what to think, what to believe, who to trust, who's your enemy, who's not. You got to see through these people. They rule the world based on deception, and in all of their deception, they code their important symbols, their important numbers. Heads up for July 11th, especially the city of Orlando. I think these people got another stunt planned. Until next time.